Episode 8 initially looks like another absurd adventure involving alien parasites, dance competitions, serial killers, and sentient brain monsters. But beneath all the chaos lies one of the show's honest explorations of Rick and Morty's relationship. By the end of the episode, Rick is forced to confront something he usually avoids at all costs: the fact that he hurts the people closest to him. While the story never abandons its trademark comedy, it ends with one of Rick's rare moments of genuine self-awareness. The entire episode begins because Rick refuses to do something incredibly simple. After Morty accidentally destroys Rick's beloved alien distillery while asking for a ride to buy Pokémon cards, Rick lashes out with one of the cruelest insults he's ever directed at his grandson. He tells Morty that happiness has never existed whenever Morty is around, and even compares him to bait that should have been discarded long ago. The moment Morty runs away crying, Rick regrets what he said, but instead of apologizing, he invents another scientific shortcut. Rather than repairing the emotional damage himself, Rick implants Morty with Sympathid, an alien parasite that rewires empathy. Once attached, Morty cannot interpret Rick's insults as insults anymore. Every harsh comment becomes encouragement inside Morty's mind. Whenever emotions become uncomfortable, Rick reaches for technology instead of honesty. The parasite allows Rick to keep behaving exactly the same without facing any consequences. In Rick's mind, fixing Morty's emotional response is easier than fixing his own behavior. Rick and Morty's mission to obtain the galaxy's last Grimaldian potato perfectly illustrates the problem. The intergalactic dance competition requires absolute trust between partners. Normally, Rick's constant criticism would make that impossible, but thanks to the Sympathid, Morty believes every cruel remark is actually praise. He feels completely supported by Rick for perhaps the first time in his life. The result is their best teamwork in years. Ironically, none of it is genuine. Morty later admits that, even knowing it was artificial, it felt wonderful to believe Rick actually appreciated him. That moment is heartbreaking because it reveals how desperately Morty wants even the smallest sign of approval from his grandfather. Rick gave him the illusion of the relationship he always wanted instead of actually becoming that person. One of the episode's saddest twists comes when Morty secretly keeps the Sympathid inside longer than Rick intended. He knows something is wrong, he also knows the emotional connection isn't real, but he chooses to keep it anyway. That decision says everything about their relationship. For a brief period, Morty gets to experience what life feels like when Rick believes in him. Even fake affection is better than not at all. Unfortunately, the parasite doesn't simply increase empathy, it consumes it. By the time Rick removes it, Morty's emotional centers have been almost completely drained, creating the grotesque psychic brain creature that becomes the episode's final threat. The brain creature creates one of the funniest and smartest ideas in the episode. Morty loses almost all empathy, Rick gains far too much. For years, Rick has functioned with almost no emotional restraint, while Morty's constantly absorbed everyone else's feelings. Now those roles reverse. Morty suddenly behaves exactly like Rick. He's cold, detached, and sarcastic. Meanwhile, Rick becomes overwhelmed by compassion. He apologizes to grieving strangers. He worries endlessly about everyone else's feelings. He becomes emotionally incapable of making practical decisions because every tragedy affects him personally. Neither extreme works. The episode argues that empathy isn't something you should maximize or eliminate. Like most human emotions, it requires balance. The bizarre subplot involving Jerry, Summer, and the serial killer isn't just random comedy. It's actually reinforcing the episode's central message. Jerry tries so hard to avoid conflict that he pretends to be another serial killer. Summer becomes so focused on obtaining Rick's industrial drums that she delays rescuing an actual kidnapping victim. Everyone is behaving irrationally because they're prioritizing the wrong things. The misunderstanding reaches its peak when the killer becomes convinced Jerry is actually trying to murder Summer. Eventually, Morty, now stripped of nearly all empathy, becomes the only person capable of speaking to the killer with complete emotional honesty. Instead of manipulating him or pretending everything's fine, Morty tells him exactly what he needs to hear. If you want comfort, ask for it. The killer finally does exactly that. He walks outside and asks for a hug. Instead, the police immediately shoot him. Like much of Rick and Morty, the joke is incredibly dark. But it also reinforces the episode's point that emotional breakthroughs don't always erase reality or its consequences. The most important moment comes after the brain creature is destroyed. Rick finally explains why the Sympathid experiment failed. He realizes empathy should never be artificially manipulated because it serves an important purpose. If someone continually hurts you, empathy shouldn't convince you the abuse is acceptable. Pain exists for a reason. Morty then asks the obvious question. If empathy shouldn't excuse cruel behavior, doesn't that make Rick the problem? For perhaps the first time in the series, Rick doesn't dodge the question with sarcasm. He simply answers, "Yeah, I guess so." It's an astonishing admission. Rick isn't claiming he'll suddenly become a better person. He isn't promising to change overnight. He's simply acknowledging reality. That's something he almost never does. Instead of inventing another excuse, another gadget, or another philosophical argument, Rick finally accepts responsibility for the damage he causes. It's a small step, but for Rick, it's enormous. The final classroom joke drives the message home one last time. Morty is still so overwhelmed by lingering empathy that he completely overlooks the obvious danger of someone threatening Miss Goldenfold's life. It's a reminder that compassion alone isn't enough. People also need judgment, honesty, and the willingness to face reality. In the end, the episode isn't really about alien parasites or psychic monsters. It's about Rick finally recognizing that the people around him don't need their emotions rewritten. They need him to stop giving them reasons to be hurt in the first place.